Something big is happening just north and south of the United States border. And honestly, most Americans haven't noticed yet. Canada and Mexico, longtime trade partners of the United States, are now working together on something bold, a new trade corridor that completely bypasses the United States. This isn't just about avoiding tolls or saving time, it's a direct response to President Trump's 30% tariff on steel and auto parts. A tariff that disrupted the entire flow of cross-border manufacturing. The new route is called the Northern Corridor Free Trade Series, and its purpose is clear move high-value goods between Mexico and Canada without touching United States soil. No United States ports, no United States highways, no United States customs. Why is this a big deal? Because the United States processes over $750 billion worth of trade with Canada and Mexico every year. Now up to $120 billion of that is about to go around the country entirely. This could gut the revenue of United States ports, slash jobs and warehouse hubs like Detroit and Buffalo, and hit the Midwest economy where it hurts most. And if that wasn't enough, it might even force Washington to rethink its entire trade strategy. So how exactly are Canada and Mexico pulling this off? And what does it mean for the future of North American trade? Let's break it down. For decades, Canada and Mexico played their roles in a tightly woven North American supply chain. Canada sent its metals and components south, Mexico shipped parts and labor north, and the United States, sitting in the middle, processed, assembled, and exported the final goods. It was a triangle that worked, until it didn't. When President Trump announced a 30% tariff on steel and auto parts, he didn't just raise costs, he broke trust. Suddenly, Canadian and Mexican manufacturers faced huge fees just to move goods through United States territory, even if those goods weren't staying in the United States. That's when something unusual happened. Canada and Mexico quietly teamed up behind closed doors. Instead of protesting loudly or waiting for the tariffs to be lifted, they designed a new route. A route that would let them trade directly, skipping United States customs, ports, and roads entirely. It was the first time the two countries planned something this ambitious together. Not just cooperation, but joint independence from the United States market. And it wasn't just about saving money. It was a long-term bet on reshaping how the continent moves its most valuable cargo. That new plan would soon become known as the Northern Corridor, and it's built to be permanent. Ready to see how it works? Let's dive into the blueprint. The Northern Corridor isn't just a theory. It's a fully mapped-out network of rail lines, ports, highways, and digital systems designed to move billions in trade without ever touching United States soil. Here's how it works. First, there's the Pacific Short Link. This rail system connects Mexico's Mazatlan port to Canada's Prince Rupert terminal on the Pacific coast. Instead of sending Mexican goods north through Texas and into the United States, they're loaded onto trains and ships that travel directly up the Pacific. Once in Canada, these goods can reach manufacturing zones without passing a single United States checkpoint. Second, there's the Great Lakes Flexible Ring. This allows Canadian steel, nickel, and lumber to head south through Canada's internal rail and coastal ports. Instead of crossing into Buffalo or Detroit, goods are sent through the St. Lawrence River to Cuba, repackaged into smaller containers, and then shipped to Mexico's Veracruz port, where they're exempt from domestic tariffs. Third, there's a powerful innovation, the digital customs bridge. Canada and Mexico have integrated their customs systems using blockchain. This means trade documents are automatically verified between the two countries, with no need for United States pre-clearance. That also means no United States customs fees, no delays, no middleman. Together, these three components form a seamless loop. Goods like wind turbine steel, lithium cells, auto parts, and minerals move north and south without ever entering United States territory. And this route isn't just cleaner, it's cheaper. In fact, every ton moved this way avoids United States logistics premiums, tolls, and taxes that used to add up fast. With the corridor now in motion, the next question is, what does the United States stand to lose? Let's take a look at the real cost. At first glance, skipping a few toll booths or customs fees might not sound like a big deal. But when you zoom out, the numbers tell a different story. And they're massive. According to United States Customs data, $138 billion worth of goods from Canada and Mexico, used to pass through the United States just to reach a third country. These goods were stored, processed, or reassembled in United States territory before being sent elsewhere, creating jobs, paying taxes, and feeding a huge logistics industry. Now, Canada and Mexico aim to redirect at least half of that trade, $69 billion, to their own ports and free zones by 2026. That means shipping companies in New York and Los Angeles lose out. Warehouses in Illinois go quiet. Customs brokers, fuel suppliers, and insurance agents along United States highways see contracts vanish. When you add up lost customs declarations, transportation fees, fuel sales, highway tolls, and lodging costs, the total economic hit to the United States balloons to $86 billion over 2 years. This isn't just a drop in GDP. It's a direct punch to some of America's most trade-dependent states. And we're not even at the core industry yet, because the biggest damage comes next, in America's industrial heartland. Let's head to the Midwest. Nowhere is the fallout from the Northern Corridor more painful than in the American Midwest, especially for the auto industry, the backbone of cities like Detroit, Toledo, and Fort Wayne. For years, factories in Michigan, Ohio, and Indiana thrived by taking semi-finished auto parts from Mexico and Canada, assembling them into final products, and shipping them worldwide. That's how $85 billion worth of Mexican-Canadian parts flowed through the United States every year. But under the new corridor, that pipeline is drying up. Here's what's changing. Mexican lithium battery modules will now travel from Monterrey to Mazatlan, then by rail and ship to Prince Rupert, and finally overland to Ontario, Canada, all without crossing the U.S. border. There, in Canada, they'll be turned into electric SUVs. This shift means 360,000 electric vehicles per year will no longer be assembled in the United States. Why does that matter? Because for every 10,000 vehicles, the auto industry supports about 3,000 indirect jobs in parts supply, maintenance, logistics, and local services. So losing 360,000 units means 108,000 indirect jobs at risk in the U.S. Midwest. That's not just people working in auto plants. It's truck drivers, forklift operators, packaging companies, tool suppliers, and mechanics. And with those jobs go the taxes they pay. Roughly $12.7 billion in wage-based taxes wiped out. Trump's tariff was supposed to protect American industry, but instead, it may be accelerating its flight north and south. So why are Canada and Mexico investing so heavily in this new path? Let's look at the long-term strategy behind the corridor. Canada and Mexico aren't just reacting to tariffs. They're building a new system from the ground up, and they're making sure it lasts. Over the past 5 years, Canada quietly poured $2.3 billion Canadian dollars into modernizing the Asia-Pacific Gateway, including the Prince Rupert Terminal. This makes it one of the most efficient ports in North America, perfectly placed to link with Mexico's Pacific coast via rail. On the financial front, both countries have already locked in some serious capital. Canada's Export Development Bank pledged $2.1 billion Canadian dollars to support the corridor. Mexico's Bancomex added 27 billion pesos, fueling infrastructure across highways, ports, and digital systems. And it's not just about trade in cars or steel. Energy is now part of the deal too. Canada will soon start shipping 5 million tons of LNG per year to Mexico from a liquefaction facility in Kitimat. That gas used to go to power plants in California, but now it'll flow through Mexico's Manzano plant straight to local industry. The Northern Corridor isn't just faster or cheaper. It's greener. And honestly, that could become its biggest selling point. Here's why. When Canada's low-carbon steel meets Mexico's next-generation lithium batteries, the final products qualify for Green Production Certification, a label that shows they were made with lower emissions and cleaner energy. This matters because Europe's Carbon Border Adjustment Mechanism, or CBAM, is coming into full effect. It's basically a carbon tax on imported goods that don't meet strict emission standards. If a car or steel beam is made with dirty energy, it gets taxed at the border. But Canada and Mexico's joint supply chain? It could qualify for exemption, making their goods more attractive and competitive in Europe and other environmentally conscious markets. And there's more. With digital customs tools and blockchain approval, their system cuts red tape and border delays, giving manufacturers more predictability, something every supply chain manager wants. All this means the Northern Corridor might not just replace U.S. transit routes, it could become a preferred highway for clean trade, attracting more volume, more investors, and new partnerships. In fact, some analysts say trade along the corridor could double in just a few years, and not just at America's expense, but at Europe and Asia's gain. If that happens, the U.S. won't just lose revenue, it could lose its position in the global clean tech race. So where does this leave Washington? Let's close with what this all means for the future. The Northern Corridor isn't just a detour. It's a new trade reality. What began as a response to Trump's 30% tariffs has now evolved into a full-scale trade ecosystem, complete with dedicated rail lines, shipping lanes, financing, customs tech, and energy swaps. And honestly, the numbers are staggering. By the time the agreement is fully in place, the U.S. could lose $245 billion in production and transit revenues over 5 years. That's more than it gained from NAFTA's early years, and the blow hits hardest not in D.C., but in Midwestern towns, southern ports, and border highways that once thrived on cross-border commerce. Canada and Mexico are already moving forward. The infrastructure is funded, the routes are mapped, and the first shipments are coming. Even if the U.S. drops its tariffs tomorrow, the new system is cheaper, cleaner, and more predictable. That makes it hard to undo. And with green certification advantages on the horizon, this corridor could also unlock European markets that the U.S. might struggle to reach under its current industrial structure. In short, the trade wall meant to isolate foreign industries has ended up isolating America itself. The supply chain links are snapping into a new pattern, and they no longer center on Washington. The next 6 months will decide whether this becomes a temporary shift or a permanent reset of North America's trade map. What do you think? Is this a smart move by Canada and Mexico or a short-sighted reaction to protectionism? Let us know in the comments. And if you want to stay updated on stories like this, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on notifications. Thanks for watching.